We are in Latin America. This is the Latin America session of the our marathon. I'd like to start by with our presentation. We are just now starting with the employer branding maturity in Latin America. It's something that Caio and I have put together a brief material just to introduce our next talented speakers that will be talking in a few more moments. But the idea here is to share with you a little bit of our knowledge as local experts in terms of what we have seen and what is different here in Latin America than in other parts of the world. So, Caio, I guess you're now one, right? Still not. Something's happening to Caio's connection, but I can continue meanwhile. So the idea here, guys, is to give you an idea of how this maturity is different from other parts of the world. So we have put together two parts of this presentation. The first one is much more related to what we see in terms of expectations of companies and how do we differentiate employer branding initiatives in Latin America than in other parts of the world. The second part that Caio will be presenting us is more connected to some other initiatives that we have collected, or Caio, more precisely, has collected
Yep.
as a
Am I
representative
on?
of Radancy. Now you're on. So yeah, you're still in time to introduce yourself, to say hello to our beautiful audience.
Thanks so much. Technology issues, I don't know what's happening. I just had a call using Teams, everything else. We tested the platform, everything was fine. But that's how an event run, live events run, right? So
That's
thanks,
it.
Gustavo. Thanks everyone for being here with us live or watching it later. So pleasure to be here another year along with my mate, Gustavo here. So cool.
So
You're
yes,
on. I
I
come
was
after
I
you.
was getting a little intro of what we're going to present. So the idea here is to start with some references in terms of what we see, and then looking more specifically, which is the second part of this conversation, will be more focused on your experience in terms of candidate experience, what people are expecting from employers in Latin America, which is also something interesting because it has a lot of to do with how culture is affecting the workplaces and how these expectations, especially from the Gen generation, is changing and shaping everything that we do in terms of employer branding initiatives and employer positioning, things like that. So,
Yeah.
just to get started, if you have watched our presentation last year, you might probably thinking, I can't believe those guys are repeating the same presentation. But no, it's just to capture your attention. See that this is a quote that we start our presentation with all the time. So, and this has a lot to do with our belief in terms of if we are able to share values with the company, if people believe they can share their values with the company, they will stay loyal to the brand. So this is a statement from Howard Schultz, former CEO and chairman of Starbucks. It has to do exactly with the topic that we're going to discuss here. How can we companies, how does companies are able to share their vision, and how can people relate this vision to their own values, to their own experience, to their own legacy, to what they are expecting from the company. So this is the secret. That's why we have Caio here as well, because Caio
Yep.
is one of the greatest experts in this topic in Latin America.
I'll bring data. I'll bring data to the sentence to reinforce what we're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, when you hear me saying it's opinion, when you hear Caio saying it's based on data. So that's pretty much the joke here. That's why we're in duo here. But jokes aside, let's start with a little background of the Latin American workplace. This is something I'd like to start working because not everybody who is attending to this session is either familiarized or has had an experiences working with Latin America. But one of the things that we see here is that it's not about a problem of unemployment. What we see here is a very interesting contrast between a high demand for highly paid, better qualified professionals, while on the other side of the spectrum, we see a great majority of people who are fighting for a low-paid, under-skilled job, and this is very challenging. If you look at the technology side of the businesses, if you look at the tech companies, they are last time I saw it was about 40,000 openings, job openings, because we didn't have people to fill them. On the other hand, you see lots of people who are undereducated, who are striving for working very basic jobs, and that's exactly what we see right now. So it's not a matter of how companies are positioning themselves to attract people on all levels of the structure, but more specifically to work with people that are highly qualified, highly paid, and world-class professionals that are more complicated to attract and retain in Latin America, especially because obviously what we see in other parts of the world is that some companies, especially in Canada, in India, in other parts of Europe, are identifying those talents here and also attracting them. On top of that, we see that there is a study from a university here saying that LATAM university students, they tend to be more inclined to start their own business upon graduation than in other parts of the world. So lots of entrepreneurship that is happening here. And this is affecting long-term plans of companies in terms of how can we attract people. So imagine that a company that is now evaluating their 2030 vision, how this is affecting their capability to attract the right talent. Because imagine that about 1 in 4 employees, 1 in 4 students, graduate students, are not really considering working for a company. So imagine that how this impacts the workforce. And it goes without saying that those people who are not considering to work for companies are probably the let's say the best ones, the high performance ones. So this is also a different aspect of the spectrum of attracting and retaining talent. We see a lower economic growth leading to unemployment rates at 6.5% in 2014 to 2024. I'm sorry, sustaining the highest self-employment rates around the world. So this is something that is also very peculiar in Latin America. It's not that people are necessarily looking for a job, as we saw in the previous bullet. People are really inclined to start their own business, and which takes is that we see this number of 6.5% unemployment rate. We say, wow, it's not that bad. But if you consider that in some countries in Latin America, especially ones that are still in development, so like Peru or Paraguay, the percentage of people who are self-employed, they go as up as 60% of the adult population. That's why you see these numbers so low, because we don't capture the entire reality of the economic scenarios of those countries. Brazil and Mexico, which are the largest ones, the largest economies in Latin America, probably we're looking at 35-40% of the adult population are working as self-employed, which is also very high. So that's why we don't see these numbers so reliable, the 6.5 in terms of the whole spectrum of the whole size of the economy. And another thing that I guess is important to mention here is that people in Latin America tend to stay longer working for the same company than in other parts of the world. So the work tenure in Latin America tends to be 20% lower than in Europe, for example. So people are much more, let's say, inclined or stimulated to find new jobs than in other parts of the world, especially in Europe. So tenure here tends to be 20% lower over the past 3 years. So what brings us to the current state? So what we focus here and what we see more happening in a more, let's say, predominant way is to see that companies are focusing more their efforts on flexible benefits and well-being programs. So those EVP intangible elements are gradually gaining more momentum in people's strategies. We see that, especially here in Brazil, we see a lot of companies that are more focused on guaranteeing that not only well-being is covered, but also sometimes some aspects of lifestyle. This is something that we'll be seeing in the next slides. We have Caio here as an expert here. So extensive use of digital media, not only LinkedIn, but we see lots of employer branding activations using TikTok and Instagram in Latin America rather than in other parts of the world. Here, Caio, probably you you can see. So you
Yep.
have more to say of this than myself.
That's the what they call the post and pray, right? So people just rely like 90% of their efforts and organic media. So that's still a challenge. Because when they say digital media worldwide, people tend to sponsor, like sort of they add money to their campaigns and all that. You're still looking to just having like nice posts, nice creatives, nice assets, and not only invest in few companies to invest in sponsoring. So that's what they call the post and pray strategy. So I mean, still a long way to go, but it's getting better.
Yeah, and this is also interesting because we don't have the such a huge maturity in terms of say recruiting marketing initiatives here.
We don't.
But on the other side of the spectrum, we have those initiatives more focused on, let's say, social media than professional media, which is kind
Correct.
of interesting as well. Some emphasis on transparency and dialogue. So although paid transparency is not really something still not as well developed as it is, for example, in Europe or in some parts of the US, we see that companies are more inclined to start having some creative alternative to stimulate continuous communication and active listening to their people. It's not uncommon for us to see that it's in Latin America, things are a bit more informal and a bit more social. So what we see is that you don't see, it's not uncommon for us to see, for example, having a pizza hangout as part of the strategy to have more transparency and to stimulate more dialogue in companies, happy hours, things like that. So this is something that we see in happening in a way, and also connected to the aspirations of those Gen Zs and people who are as represented the biggest part of the opportunities in terms of career of our companies. Last but not least, talking about strengthening organizational culture. And this is something that we see is more connected perhaps with the tangible side of EVP, when we look at how to connect, for example, variable pay, short-term incentives to aspirational company elements such as vision, legacy, and proposition, and then make sure that the individual expectations and personal values, especially for remote workforce, are also being connected. So this is something that started over the pandemic. This is something that we saw as a concern, and not only has been very effective in terms of guaranteeing that this alignment is happening, but I see many companies. This is something that has been implemented in a more, let's say, successful way.
And I guess just to add something here before we go on,
Of course.
we do tend to have a kind of a short-term culture for results, for implementations, for everything. I know the world it's running fast, a lot of information, a lot of competitors, etc., etc. But as you and I, we do have this global. We're happy to live, like for years in different global organizations, so we can compare how Americans do, how Europeans do, and how we in Latin America do. So we tend to have, we're watching you guys here. So next day we need to do something, right? And
Yeah.
then 2 days time, you have to have a result. And doesn't
Yeah.
work like that, especially when it comes to branding, like comes to talents. It's a long-term journey. It's not a short-term. And that's part of
Yes.
the local challenge to make people understand or to make companies understand that it's a long walk. It's not a short, it's a 100 meter. It's not 100 meters, right? It's a marathon.
This is something so particular from our culture, the need for immediate results. It's something that we see a lot here. But what we see also, I'll show you very quickly some evolution of employee benefits that is related to employee value proposition. So while we see companies now are repositioning the offerings in terms of shifting from, let's say, a pre-pandemic emphasis where companies were much more focused on standardized one-size-fits-all benefits that are where we're focused to supplement solutions and services that were already somehow offered, moving to a post-pandemic approach that we see standardized benefits gradually shifting towards a more personalized offering, transcending basic health needs to include some new features like social, mental health, prevention, things that are more, let's say, in line with a more comprehensive well-being proposition. And some of the aspects that we see now that is also part of the proposition, and there are many young talents that are more starting to focus on this, is exactly what we call the flexible future. So those hyper personalized benefits, including lifestyle elements that can adapt it to employee needs in near real time. So um, it's that kind of conversation that I have decided to have a pet, and then all of a sudden I can access my benefit platform at my company, and I find out that there is a health plan for my pet, and this is something that I value a lot in terms of having this because it's part of my lifetime, it's part of my lifestyle, is part of my aspiration. So how can the company also have flexibility to bring this as part of the value proposition to its people? And talking about similarities and differences between Latin America and the rest of the world, one of the topics we have already mentioned a couple of times here, and it's a common ground between Latin America, Europe, and US, is the work-life balance and organizational culture. So companies here in Latin America tend to be very aware of the impact of lifestyle initiatives and their engagement initiatives, and are also being very open to creative and to highlight their own features in a not so not so say rigid model. In relation to Europe, what we have here is much more focus on transparency and sustainability. This is something that we see a lot of governance initiatives showcasing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and SDG as part of the employer branding strategies. While when we compare Latin America and US, what we see to have in common is flexibility innovation. So in similar way to the US, companies rely heavily on recognition and appreciation programs, not only to drive career development opportunities, but also to employ and engage their people. So Caio, now that we have bring
Beautiful.
this small introduction, what do you have to tell us about candidate experience, what we've seen in the last few years? I guess we have another 11 minutes, so
Yep,
take your time. We're all
I will.
yours.
And help me here too. So, because I know we have a
Okay, no
great
problem.
understanding about the market. I haven't introduced it properly myself, I guess. So, I'm the regional vice president for LATAM for Radancy, the leader for all the HR tech candidate experience slash employer branding in the world. So it's been nearly 8 years here, understanding the market, developing the market, seeing the, as I mentioned before, so the difference between what we're running LATAM versus other parts of the world. So this is a specific, I mean, this is part of the research that we do or surveys we do around the world. We do have some a cut, let's say, for our region. It's not as big numbers as we have, like have over 3,000 candidates that answered this survey. We run in different career sites we have in the region for different companies, different segments. And I guess again, you mentioned that I bring data, right? Although I'm a advertisement, I'm a fun guy, but I like data because with data you can discuss, right? Or
That's
you
it.
can discuss, but you're gonna lose eventually because that data
Opinions,
is always
opinions,
that.
opinions on data are not really.
Yeah.
You can't compete with data.
What I learned in my different experience that when you have the data, you change the I think to I know. So and that's
Mhm.
it.
Good one.
So I'm gonna share some of these questions that we've done and some of the answers that we got. And again, we're pretty open. This is not like okay, maybe your company is a little bit different. Maybe you as a candidate or as a professional might think differently. But again, this is data, and I like the data to have like some good discussions and mature discussion into that. So first one here is like what are primarily looking for an opportunity, and just to back up of what I've just said is like interesting and challenge work and getting ahead in my career, right? And when it comes to compensation and benefits, that's the number. And that when you compare, when LinkedIn surveys or Manpower or different organizations when they do the same kind of question, the answer or the order is pretty much the same. So salary for some time already, maybe 2 3 years now. It's not like the primary reason why people uh, change jobs. So they're
Mhm.
looking into opportunities and learning, and they come together, right? The more you learn, the more you grow, the more you go ahead in your career. So, and why is that? A little bit about Radancy again. We do have 700 plus career sites in different languages, different segments around the world. As I said, part of these are in LATAM, and we can compare and we see like why people come to the career site, right? So that's, and if people came to the career site because they're probably tend to, not that everybody does, but they tend to apply to a job in the organization. So that's why the whole conversation, and we usually say that where the magic happens, right? What's the magic? Where you put your message in front of a candidate, bring to the career site, show them a job, and then they apply. They're gonna stay in the recruitment process. They're gonna go to the end. They're gonna accept our offer letter. It's another story. But what we do is from high to apply. That's our goal at Traders. So this is the again the data that we bring in here for discussion. So number two, like why do you visit a career site, right? So some people say, okay, do have a specific job in mind, and people they might not have the specific job, but they like the company, so they want to know, okay, I like what this company is talking about. Can be diversity, can be getting ahead in my career, can be about technology, innovation. Again, depends on the message you're throwing out there. So people again they come to the career site and eventually they're going to apply for the job. So it's, and when we see here, so people eventually they know what they're looking at and they're going to consider your company, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the company itself in a couple of slides. Then what, until what degree, like, so what kind of information, and that's very important when it comes to employer branding, because again the post and pray strategy won't work. I'm sorry to say that for those that don't actually spend money on media, doesn't matter what kind of media you're looking at. We at Radicy use over 40,000, 40,000, so 40,000 different channels last year to ensure that the right candidate is seeing the right message for the right company. And that's how you're supposed to do or to run your campaigns, right? Talking to the right people, not just running any campaign to any candidate. And again, we bring to the career site to specific landing page, to specific contents, and then we show the right job, right? Eventually, of course, we're going to show the job, but I mean, the goal here is always to get the people convinced that your company is the best, and not always they know that or they know much about your company. So how much information they found in the career site is very important, and that's what we try to help them. Can we move to the next one, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. So this is nice. So, okay, how much you know about my company? So do you think my company is a leader, somehow a leader? And again, people might not know your company, or they might consider a company, or they might, I mean, that's the, again, why the magic happens is that the more information that people know about your company, and of course, social media is part of it, different media or different blogs or events. I mean, it's all together, right? When it comes to a strategy for employer branding, and then how you build awareness, how you build your company's reputation into a candidate's mindset. So it's very important that people understand what you do, and you don't have doesn't have to be a leader, right? But you have to at least be in the top two or three priority as for a candidate to consider when applying for a job. Because
And
when I say, oh, go.
no, it's interesting to see how this is something that is very it's opinion based, because even if the company isn't the leader, if the
Yep,
candidate considers the company was one of the leaders, he has
perfect.
better chances to apply and to hire than the opposite, right?
Exactly, exactly. And again, we have like different companies, different segments, big, medium, small companies in here. But again, and that's the perception, right? Reputation is also about perception. And again, depends on the story that you tell, depends on, and eventually in your segment, in specific cut of that segment, you might be a leader. Or depend on, again, how you sell that or how you promote your brand, your numbers, your company,
Mhm.
etc. So and that's a good point. Thanks for adding that. And again, what's the most attractive thing about companies? And again, just backing up what of just presented, mission purpose, career development. So again, potential for professional development, and eventually products and services. So again, the commercial or the institutional brand will help that, but it's not enough. And that's why I tell everybody, because I know I work for this small company, we're a B2B company, so we don't have this employer brand or big brand. I mean, even the big brands with big technology companies, with big attractive products or services, they don't ensure, or they don't guarantee they have the best talents. So employer branding is for everyone. Putting your message out there and do your campaigns, etc., is for everyone. And I have just one old, let's say old, it's like 4 years old. I don't have the number here, but I remember like there's one in the United States. There's this survey about who are the companies that spend more money on employer branding, and you see like the top companies. It's going to be Apple, Meta, Google, or Alpha, etc., etc., Oracle, Disney. So the big companies, they do spend more money because even though they are these big companies, well-known companies, they have the challenge to attract and hire the best talents. So it's not just having like a big nice consumer brand, but having a big nice employer brand. So of course, again, it does help as you can hear, but it's not enough. So that's a good message here in this graphic. And then to join this company, again, it's about money. What I tell people is this: it's at least in LATAM, and I think that's something different that we've run in different organizations throughout the world. Is that usually like the money is not said, it's not advertised, it's not even it's maybe in the fourth, fifth step of a recruitment process. So when you apply for a job, you don't know how much money they're going to offer you. So if you tell a good story and if you convince people about it, you might, and that's something that happened over and over again. I do the data Caio, and I did that last Monday on an event that I was running, and I said, okay, whoever changed jobs to earn less money, and half of the audience said, I've done that. Not a big audience,
Wow.
but still. Why is
Yeah.
that? Because people will go for something different. They wanna. I might do like a step back in terms of money, but I can see in the near future, maybe one, two, three steps ahead in 1 to 3 years time. So that happened even to me. So I'm part of the data Caio too, and it's funny because again, it's not about money. It's about perspective. It's about future. It's
Yes.
about having the nice people to work with, nice challenge and things like that, right? So again, what kind of message
Awesome.
are you talking to people, right?
This is very powerful message.
It is. It is. And again, people want and that's part of the next discussions too. Can you move on, please? I have two other slides before I
Yes.
finish here. Thank you. So that's one thing that's very important too. So referrals, and I mean, we all are connected somehow, right? Or we get connected at some point in time somehow. So the more people and the ambassador programs and referral programs as part of the inside out message are very important because we will connect, or we will eventually you know someone that has worked or is working at the company. Doesn't have to be in the same area, doesn't have to be a close connection, but there's like a cousin of someone, of a friend, and that happens over and over again. So having these people, and they're gonna help to build your brand. So this is something very important. It's not only about it because some companies just say, okay, let's create a brand employer brand ambassador program, and that's we're safe because it's cheap. People are gonna talk about our company. It's not like that. Again, it's part of the strategy. And the more people talking about your company, your current employees, or even former employees, that's why I have like Glassdoor and sites like that help to help or not. Depends how position you are.
Sometimes I was expecting you to be sometimes,
Yes,
not all
sometimes.
the times. Yes.
Not all the time, but that will help or harm your reputation, and help or harm attracting or getting easier, faster, or no, attracting talents, right? So that's because real people will talk the real stories
That's
as
it.
an employer, right? And of course, you need to. That's why when it comes to building a strategy, it's something bigger. It's not only doing a nice video and putting like this fluffy stuff. People want to roll the real thing, and again, real people will talk the real stories. That's a very important message. Let's move on, please, to the last slide here. Thank you. And this is cool, right? So again, what motivates you at work? And again, opportunity to learn, the impact at people life, good professional relationships, and this like a delivering result, blah blah blah. So again, there's so much more and so much to tell about your company. And the message that I want to bring here is like what makes you unique, because opportunity to learn, I would say most companies, if not all, somehow they offer, same as making a positive impact into someone else's life. Yes, but how you do that? What initiatives have you got? What numbers can you share? What stories that are unique from you and your employees and your company and your regions, whatever? What can you tell these people, right? Because I can be a salesperson and I can sell anything as long as you give me the right training. But why should I sell your company, your product, your service? And that's the kind of the differentiation employer brand should do, right? In your social media, in your events, and again, of course, in your career site. So there's a lot of stories that must be told. And again, you might be a nice consumer brand, but people don't know how it's look like to work into your company. Why should I join your company?
Yes.
Right?
And this is something that
That's
we tell a lot here. And Caio and I have something that we have been telling companies for a couple. I don't know, couple. It's a lot limited time, but for a lot of years,
several
is that
years.
we have never had human resources working so closely with marketing. I'm a marketing professional working with human resources for over 20 years.
Me
Caio
too.
is also a professional of marketing and advertising working with human resources. If we take exactly everything that we learned at school from marketing, you can apply it on human resources, you can be successful. So
100%.
doesn't matter how good your positioning is, without giving visibility to it, without showcasing it, nobody will know it. You'll be stuck in the same position. So that's pretty much what we have discussed over the past hour or so.
That
So here's our contact information. Here you can use these QR codes to connect with us at LinkedIn if you want to. If you want to extend this conversation, if you want to have more specifics regarding Latin America or any country in Latin America, Caio and I are at your disposal. We're good, so we can help you with anything that you might require.